What's going on, guys? It's Michael Nichols Pierce. Welcome back to episode 2 of Inside Equity, real news for our people, our culture, and our community. So I always make sure that we address the real issues that are going on in today's society, especially within the African American community. The topic that we're discussing today is near and dear to our beloved guest, Ms. Tanerra Willis. Thank you so much for taking the time to be out here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. So if you don't mind telling the people who are viewing, tell us a little bit about you, your story, what made you create the platform and what you have today, whatever you're comfortable sharing with our people.
All right, that's a lot. We're coming in hot. So I'm Tanerra Willis. I am a certified pediatric registered nurse by trade. I'm also a child of God. I am a mother of a 12-year-old little boy and a wife of 19 years. I created my platform, The Amazing Corner, because I wanted to help people who look like me and who were going through the same experiences that I was going through. I wanted to be their partners in growth. I wanted to show them in real time that I go through some of the same things you go through. I have been through some of the same things that you go through, but I'm an overcomer. I have resilience and I can win. And I was hoping that by being transparent, that I encourage other people to win. So I say I'm your partner in growth. So that's what my platform is about. I create books, merchandise, events, and consulting services that help people grow.
I love it. So if you don't mind sharing with some of the viewers, you have an amazing testimony. And again, whatever you're comfortable sharing, I don't want to overstep. Just about your journey, some of the challenges that you guys have faced, and just your overall testimony with you and your family.
And you mean my family building challenges?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am a woman who suffers from infertility. That's still something that I experience to this day. Oh, Lord. I thought I put my thing on Do Not Disturb. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
So I'm a woman who suffers with infertility. My husband and I had been married about 2 or 3 years, and we were having unprotected sex, of course, because we're married, and we hadn't gotten pregnant. So my OBGYN suggested that I go see a reproductive endocrinologist. And when we first went in, the first visit was, of course, weird, uncomfortable, shameful.
Mm-hmm.
It was in my hometown, so I knew it would be a lot of people there that knew me. So I was even embarrassed to be in the practice. And when we went in and got the first consult, the provider, he went in on my husband. He basically assumed it was him.
Mm-hmm.
He told him so many reasons why he was almost certain that it was his issue that we hadn't gotten pregnant. And after a series of tests, sperm analysis, and different studies like that, we found out that he didn't have any challenges with impregnating a woman. So of course now I feel like there's a target on my back, like, because it has to be me now, right? And so there's more shame, there's more embarrassment, there's more guilt. Long story short, after a series of tests and studies, I learned that I had cysts, PCOS, and also blocked fallopian tubes. So those were the things that were prohibiting me from getting pregnant unassisted. And he had told me at that point that, hey, there's still a chance that you can get pregnant alone. You're still young, you're still early in your marriage, you have some time. But at this point, I think we're at 4 years in, and we're like, okay, we don't want to wait anymore. What are our options? So he gave us our options. Fast forward, we wound up getting IVF, which is in vitro fertilization, where they take my husband's my husband's sperm, and they impregnate it, and it's in the tube and then put it inside my uterus. So it bypassed my blocked fallopian tubes, which was one of the major contributors for me not to be able to get pregnant on my own. The passageway to get to the egg to implant the sperm just wasn't happening. So gratefully, I am one of the few women who had a successful IVF treatment the first time.
Yeah.
So that's a blessing. Many women go through anywhere from 3 to 10 or even sometimes more than that treatments. Many women, IVF doesn't work. They have to do different things like IUI or surrogates and things of that sort. But the most prevalent experience from that was those emotions I felt and experience that shame, that embarrassment, that guilt. Of course, we had been married for 4 years, and what do you ask somebody the minute they get pregnant? I mean, get married. When are you getting pregnant?
Right.
Everybody wants to know, when are you having a baby, or why haven't you had a baby? They think this, you get married one day, the next day you should be building a
Like it's their
family.
business.
Like it's their business, or like they're going to help support it and all those good things. So you always, when you went to friends gatherings, family gatherings, you hated that question, especially now that there's a reason why
Yeah.
I'm not pregnant. It's not a choice. Um, so I went through a lot of shame and guilt and isolation. I didn't talk to a lot of people about it. Even the people close to me, my best friend, my sisters, my mother, my father, for years I never talked about it.
Hmm.
When I was going through the process, one of my coping mechanisms was journaling. So I started to journal. And then I'm also a certified pediatric registered nurse. And so I started to do research and ask questions and get more educated on it. And I learned how prevalent it was. And remember, that's about 14, 15 years ago. So back then, it was 1 in 10 families. When I started to write the book, it was 1 in 8 families. And then this present day, it's literally 1 in 5 families. So just hearing those numbers, I stopped being ashamed. I stopped being embarrassed. I didn't feel alone. I knew it was very prevalent, and there was no reason why I had to feel that way. So I started to use my platform to kind of share more openly. And almost every time I shared, other people would say, "Me too," or "My daughter too," or "My friend too," and they would share their story. And you felt like felt the sense of relief that they weren't alone. So that's kind of how I got started.
Mm. You mentioned something that was key was when you were going through that process and it's in your hometown and you felt the feeling of shame. However, you weren't alone in that. So my question to you is, what were some of the things? I know you mentioned journaling, but how did you work through that process? Because I can never relate to being a woman, let alone carrying a child,
Hmm.
let alone, going through infertility issues.
Yeah.
And I know that for you personally, there was a lot that was going on with you physically, emotionally, mentally, and everything in between. So how were you able to work through that shame and be able to work through that during the process? Because of course now you are a mother and you have a beautiful baby boy and you have a great family, but it didn't always appear that way.
Hmm.
So when you were going through the trials to get to the testimony, to get to the end of it, how did you work through those emotions?
I would say there were both unhealthy and healthy ways that I went through that. One of the things that I talk about is I used to lie about why I'm not pregnant or why we're not having a baby because I didn't want to tell the truth. I used to make excuses or create distractions. So I say that to say, because there's people doing that now.
Right.
They don't want to tell the truth because of the hurt, the pain, the grief, the things like that. But other things, I'm a Christian woman, so I use my faith a lot. I read a lot. Like you said, I journal. And then I had a core 2 or 3 people that I would talk to. One of the fortunate thing about going to the reproductive endocrinologist in my hometown is I literally walked into the office one day and a family member was there.
Mm.
So we became each other's ally. So definitely I would tell someone, find someone who is having a similar circumstance as you. It doesn't have to be identical, but that becomes we were each other's support persons throughout the thing. We talked through different appointments and situations and scenarios. Reading helped me a lot. So those 2 things, I would say, having a core group and a support person. Definitely, if you can have someone who understands your
Mm.
experience, it helped a lot.
Yeah. I have a family member that went through very similar challenges. And excuse me, I'm sorry. Prior to them experiencing it and me witnessing firsthand because of the closeness of our relationship, I never even knew that, transparently speaking, there was such a high infertility rate with
Hmm.
African American women, let alone the processes and other options that were available to become pregnant. So my question to you is, for someone like myself, again, who will never be with child or carry a child, what are some ways that we could be advocates for those who may have been in that position or may be in that position?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I do think being that male support is important. And some things you can do is, if you're the spouse of the person going through it, is to partner with them in the experience.
Mm.
Be emotionally vulnerable. I feel like sometimes men don't understand that weight. And so they don't know how to be emotionally vulnerable and make a safe space. Historically, Black men shut down. They don't talk. They anything that makes them afraid, scared, or not they're not knowledgeable about. They kind of go inward.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you can't change that, but if you can say, I don't know how to feel or I don't know what to say, but I'm here.
Yeah.
I think that's a starting point. And then, like I said, being a safe space for that person to be able to talk about it, because just because you may not have that same feelings and emotion, you have to be that same space to allow them to go through that.
Hmm.
Especially if you are their person, they should be able to go ahead and do that. But just like with anybody, educate yourself. If you are the male partner, get tested as well. I know a lot of men who stubbornly won't get tested, and again, out of fear and shame and guilt. And a lot of times it's male factor infertility, and you never know, just because I know a lot of husbands who just are adamantly about, I'm not going to get tested. It's not me.
Yeah.
Just the male ego. So I would say be open to being tested as well. There's a lot of genetic background to it, and sometimes you don't know. Many of us don't know our genetic background, so you
Right.
would never know if you don't get genetic testing. And that is one of the prevalent causes of infertility. But being a safe space, educating yourself, and being emotionally vulnerable is a good starting place.
So how can not let me backtrack. For you and your husband, how was he supportive throughout that time? And maybe that could help other men who may be experiencing the same thing. That could kind of be, in a sense, a roadmap for them
Yeah.
to be of assistance to their partners or their wives.
So being fully transparent, that's where that being that emotional safe space came from.
Mm-hmm.
He was very much so like, if that's not what God wants for us, then that's just not what we'll have. And I'm like, well, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I want to explore options, and I want to, test things out, and I want to use our finances to grow our family, because I wasn't comfortable with if it doesn't just happen naturally. We'll move on. My husband was very much in the space of moving on, and I think that's a lot of coping
Mm,
mechanisms of men. So it took me initiating the care. And when you ask how he was supportive, he went to many visits with me. He was open to us using our finances because it's very expensive.
right.
Back then, again, about 14 years ago, at the initial onset, it was 10,000. That's without medicines.
Mm,
That's without, different things that you'll need along the process. But just to even start the process, and as a young couple in our early 20s, that's a lot of money.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Now I think you might be at 15 to 18 just to get started.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think all of those things, go to the appointments, be emotionally vulnerable, be open. He definitely didn't give us any challenges with doing the testing. Like I said, they hit the target on him first, and he was open to it. But it was more the emotional space that made me kind of like, okay, well, he doesn't want to talk about it, so I won't talk about it. So
Yeah.
that's where the journaling came on. That's when me looking for our outside support came on. We talk about it pretty open now, both of us together. But it was like something he wasn't, aware of and wasn't ready for.
Right. I was reading your book, and there was one statistic that really stood out to me when you broke it up into thirds, and you said that 1/3 of those struggling with infertility is because of the man,
Mm-hmm.
1/3 is because of the woman, and the last third is a mixture of both.
Right.
And I was actually very shocked, and this is just me being naive. I didn't know that men could have infertility
Mm-hmm.
issues. So for someone who, again, a novice like myself who may not know, and you mentioned the first steps, but where does one go to go ahead and get tested? Or for a young couple who doesn't know their status, what steps should they take, and where can they go in order to find out that information?
Yeah. So first, I think we should talk about infertility and what that means.
Yeah.
So that'll kind of speak to you. How can men have infertility? Infertility just means not being able to get pregnant unassisted for over a year.
Mhm.
So that could mean I've had multiple miscarriages. That means I can't carry the term, or I'm just not even getting pregnant. And then again, we talked about, how do you get pregnant? You need a sperm and an egg. So if a man has sperm that the motility, which is the movement or the shape or even the viability isn't good, then their sperm is not healthy.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it either doesn't impregnate an egg, or it just doesn't even live long enough to impregnate an egg. So that's some of the reasons why men have challenges, and there's a lot of causes like drugs, alcohol,
Mhm.
different immune disorders, diabetes, different things like that, cancer treatments, all of those can affect. So those are things that men go through just as well as women, and that's how they can have infertility issues. But you ask how to seek care and how to learn about it, or get tested. So you would first see a reproductive endocrinologist, or some men could even start with a urologist, and they would test your sperm. They would look at it under a microscope and look at those three different things of it: the shape, how it moves, how many you're making, and things like that. So that's one of the starting spots for men.
So speaking of lifestyle, what are some changes that people can make intentionally to ensure that they stay away from possible infertility issues?
Um, some you can't stay away from. Some
Mhm.
things some people never even know. Even once you seek infertility care, some people don't even ever find out a reason. So there's some infertility that have no unknown reasons. So I want to be careful when I say that. You may not be able to
Mm.
avoid it. But just reproductive health is important. I think a lot of times we talk to kids about not having sex, not getting pregnant, but we don't talk about long-term reproductive health. And it starts at puberty.
Mm.
So, there's a lot of teenagers and young adults having sex unprotected and getting all types of STIs, STDs, and that can cause infertility too from the scarring and any infections that you get from those diseases. So, abstaining from sex, having protected sex, being selective about your sexual partners, and also a healthy lifestyle. Abusing alcohol can cause infertility, drugs can cause infertility. Um, Abortions can cause infertility. So it really, some of the things that you can do to have more successful reproductive health is just being more selective in your health and then making good judgments, having value about your body. A lot of times we tell women to value their bodies, but we should be telling men to value their bodies as well, because they're also susceptible to sexually transmitted disease and the ramifications from that. Cancer comes from
Mm.
STDs too. So I would say have value for your body, be discerning, protect yourself, and have a healthy lifestyle, eating, diet, illicit drug use. Abstain from that as much as you can.
I love it. So we're gonna wrap this up. I have one final question, and I hope I don't throw you off too much. But if you could go back to your younger self 14 years ago, what advice would you get? What advice would you tell to yourself to assure that you felt confident and comfortable that you would get to the other side, to get to where you are today?
Oh, so only 14 years, because I'm pretty old.
Stop it.
So that's good. I thought we were going to go all the way
No,
back
no,
to
no,
the
no, no, no,
teenage
no,
years,
no,
so
no,
that might
no.
be a little easier. I was kind of, had it together about 14 years ago. I would say to be bolder, to be more risky, be more courageous. I
Yeah.
was still thinking, um I don't know what the word is, but kind of like going with the flow of what my friends were doing and what my
Mm,
family was doing, even though I knew that wasn't me.
yeah.
If that makes sense. I feel like I'm very courageous, but I shrank
Mm,
to be around the company I was around. I limited myself because of the company I was around. I wasn't ready to take the risk and stuff that I take now. Now I'm like full, strong, courageous, brave. I know what I want. I know what God has for me. I know my purpose. So I'm all in there. So I would tell the younger me, just do it afraid.
mm. Thank you again for coming through. Thank you for your gift of vulnerability and just sharing your testimony with all of us. Where can the people find you?
You can email me if you have questions at contact@theamazingcorner.com. On all social media platforms, I'm under The Amazing Corner, as well as my website, theamazingcorner.com.
I love it. There you have it, guys. Shout out to the Fifth Media headquarters for hosting us. Shout out to the Dr. Daniels of Don't Judge Me Productions, the man behind the camera, the Delaware State University, alongside the Racial Equity Consortium. I'm Mike. This is our wonderful guest, Tanerra Willis. Have a good one. Peace.